cultural traditions. The next question comes from Sharjah. The viewer, Sister Khan, writes, Dear Dr. Bilal, if one does not follow a particular madhab and takes rulings from various scholars, is it not possible that in taking rulings from different scholars on various points, particular acts like salah, one may nullify his or her acts by taking frustrations or positions that conflict with each other? What is the solution to this? Well, yes, of course. Just taking rulings from here and there and from everywhere without understanding these rulings and the principles governing them is a mistake. You know, as a layperson, we have to be careful about taking things out of context, these type of things. But we're depending on someone who has some knowledge, some Islamic background, etc., who can look at these other texts from other schools and bring them together to provide a means of guidance for that person. And it's perfectly legitimate for us to rely on others and modify the various questions or the various principles governing the salah when we find evidence to indicate that some position we're taking, etc., is not in fact correct. The viewer goes on, Sister Khan goes on to ask, if an English-speaking Muslim wants to follow a school of law, a madhab, where can one access rulings to contemporary issues? Well, for different schools, there are books which have been recently published which do address some of the modern rulings. There are books which combine the fatwa or the rulings of a variety of leading scholars of this era. One may go there and find the rulings of a particular school of thought. That is the school of thought of those who lived and taught it in that particular area. Their students would gather and compile their rulings into what came to be known as books of fatwas. We can find, for example, the book on women, rulings on women, concerning women in Islam. It's a book which was done, or which was actually a compilation of various rulings made by Sheikh bin Baz, in the Standing Committee for Religious Affairs in Saudi Arabia. Also, it included answers given by Sheikh bin Uthaymeen and others. A further question from Ms. Khan. Can you define what a scholar is and who in the Muslim world today has the authority to issue religious fatwas? Well, a Muslim scholar, has been said to be one whose knowledge exceeds his ignorance, meaning that, in any given area of Islamic knowledge, he has, Islamic discipline, he has more knowledge of that area than he is ignorant of. I mean, reality is that nobody is going to be masters of all of the areas, but there will be areas which they understand the principles, etc., which can be applied, but, one may not say that they are masters of that particular school of thought. Can you define, sorry, it's the same one. Which school of Islamic law seems to offer the most correct positions? Well, again, this is a difficult thing to answer. It has been said that the Hanbali school gives the most correct positions because Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was primarily a hadith scholar. He gathered all of the various hadiths. And so his compilation of over 40,000 hadiths is one of the largest of that generation of early scholars. And you'll find in it that Imam Ahmed had a variety of opinions. Oftentimes he'd have two different opinions, one taking a general opinion, one taking a more specific opinion. So, one can go into his school and take a variety of opinions and choose which one is most applicable to one's circumstance. Okay, question concerning the issue of concubines or slave girls who early Muslims kept without marrying them. He said, because this seems to be going against the rights of women, and is it still allowed? Well, what we're dealing with basically are prisoners of war. I mean, nobody can come around today and say, well, you know, this person working in this store or this person, I'm going to take this person as a concubine, you know, as a slave girl who will be with me, who I have access to. No, it doesn't work like this at all. Where wars have taken place, people have been captured as prisoners in war, Muslims have had different options to how to deal with them. In some cases, they would free them, as the Prophet ﷺ had instructed in some cases. Some cases, they would teach the Muslims something of what they learned as a means of earning their freedom, or purchase their freedom if they have wealth. And a third option was that they be integrated into the Muslim community. They are taken as slaves, distributed amongst those who are involved in the struggle. And these slave girls, for example, if they bore a child, then they became like a wife to the master, because he was no longer allowed to sell them, in a narration which was confirmed by Ibn Omar, or Omar himself. In the case where there is no marriage, no child has been, no issue has taken place, then, as I said, this was a means of integrating these members into the society. In many cases, what we find is that ultimately these slave girls would give birth and become the wives of their masters, and the Muslim population is increased. Furthermore, if we look at the lineage of the majority of the Abbasid rulers, this is the second major group of rulers which ruled in around the 10th century and onwards in Baghdad, we find that the vast majority of them were children of slave girls, in that their mother was a former slave girl. So, I mean, for the majority to have come from these kind of origins, or many to have come from these kind of origins, it shows that this system really provided a way by which those who were classed as outcasts in the society could be integrated back into the society as a whole. A different question, which comes from a sister in Ajman. She writes, "Dear Dr. Bilal, is imitating the kuffar related only to religious imitation, or does it include non-religious dress? Due to the globalization, it's difficult to determine when one is imitating the kuffar." No, the imitation is not limited to religious matters, though this is probably the most critical area where one has to be careful, where imitation can lead to innovation in the religion. This is why Prophet ﷺ stressed the importance of avoiding any kind of innovation, and imitation is one of the best sources for it. Should also note that the habits, practices are also dangerous areas socially, where imitation of non-Muslim practices can lead to the breakdown of Muslim families, etc., etc. So we can say that imitating the kuffar, regards all aspects of life. Muslims should distinguish themselves, should be known in society as different, the way they carry themselves, not only in terms of their dress, in terms of their character, in terms of how they treat others. All of this is very, very important, that we don't imitate the kuffar or the disbelievers in these matters. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of our program, In the Light of Islam. And I hope that you continue to follow the program in the future. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.